Reunited with my family, trying to get justice for my father. And no man or woman should be without their fathers. And we want justice for what's going on right now. And I appreciate everyone showing him some support and love.
That's the son of George Floyd. You know, think about how difficult it's been around the country, but then how about if it's your dad? How about if it's your dad? Tough situation. So tonight, what we're going to do is take a look at the charges. You've got 4 officers now charged, locked up. But what exactly are those charges, and what do prosecutors have to prove? Chanley Painter takes a closer look tonight.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the name of it. I can't breathe.
The world watched as George Floyd took his last breath in the custody of Minneapolis police.
Get in the car.
Mama.
Now all 4 former officers face serious charges. For Minnesota's top prosecutor, proving them is where the real work begins. The case will likely come down to 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the period of time that Floyd is pinned on the ground.
I filed an amended complaint that charges former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with murder in the 2nd degree.
Derek Chauvin, the officer with his knee pressed to Floyd's neck, faces 2nd-degree murder, in addition to 3rd-degree murder and 2nd-degree manslaughter. The 3 others, Tou Thao, who stood by while Thomas Lane and Alexander King helped restrain Floyd, are all facing aiding and abetting 2nd-degree murder and aiding and abetting 2nd-degree manslaughter.
I would say that these are the charges that should have been filed initially.
In order to prove 2nd-degree murder, charged here as murder without intent while committing a felony, the state does not have to prove that Chauvin intended to kill Floyd, only that he intended to assault him, and the assault, the underlying felony, resulted in his death.
It wasn't until the police officers assaulted him that he lost his ability to breathe, and he subsequently passed away.
To prove the lesser charge of 3rd-degree murder against Chauvin, prosecutors will have to show that the defendant carried out an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind. That means the defendant did not intend to kill, but acted without regard for human life.
There was an additional 2 minutes in which the officer had his knee on his neck, and they did not in any attempt in any way to perform any kind of services to revive him. That shows that the officer had a depraved mind, did not care about his well-being.
For 2nd-degree manslaughter, the state must prove the defendant caused the death by culpable negligence, where his actions created an unreasonable risk of death.
It requires less proof than the other 2 charges, a lack of due care towards Mr. Floyd.
For the 3 officers facing aiding and abetting charges, under Minnesota law, aiding and abetting makes a person just as guilty, even if they don't actually commit the crime. Therefore, Thao, Lane, and King face the same potential penalties as Chauvin, as much as 40 years in prison if the jury convicts the officers of the top count of 2nd-degree murder.
The reason thoroughness is important is because every single link in the prosecutorial chain must be strong. It needs to be strong because trying this case will not be an easy thing. Winning a conviction will be hard.
And Court TV correspondent Chanley Painter joins us tonight. Chanley, breaking this down, and it's important, right? Because the intent for the murder is only the intent to commit the assault.
Yeah, in Minnesota, there's several ways that a prosecutor can charge 2nd-degree murder. This prosecutor charged it as the 2nd-degree murder without intent in the commission of a felony, which is basically what we know as felony murder. So the prosecutor has to prove the underlying felony, the assault, and the intent to assault. And if the death is caused during that felony, then that 2nd-degree murder, potential sentence, 40 years, Vinny.
All right, now 3 officers appeared in court yesterday. What more do we know about that?
Yeah, so Tu Tao, 34-year-old, Thomas Lane, 37-year-old, and Alexander King, 26-year-old. They appeared in front of the Hennepin County District Court yesterday for a brief first appearance. They were booked when they were arrested on $1 million bail. The judge lowered it to $750,000 bail for them now. Their next court appearance is June 29th. But interestingly, yesterday, the attorneys for each of these defendants made some arguments to reduce bail. And what we learned is that for Officer King and Officer Lane, they were rookies to the force. They had actually been full-time police officers for only 4 days when this happened on May 25th. And the attorney for Thomas Lane said that, Chauvin was his training officer, and was he supposed to go against his training officer's rules? And in the criminal complaint, Vinnie, it says that former officer Lane twice asked to turn Floyd over on his side, and Chauvin overruled him. So that seems to be some of the argument, maybe some of the defense to come for these officers.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge point of contention. I could see that. We've got a couple great attorneys with us. Rick King is still with us, trial attorney, former police lieutenant, and Clayton Tyler, criminal defense attorney, joins us. He's in Minnesota tonight. So, Clayton, I want to start with you on this second-degree murder, unintentional, while committing a felony. I'm not that familiar with this statute, but it seems to be very similar to what we see in many other states and jurisdictions, is felony murder. You commit the felony, someone dies, you're responsible.
Pretty much so. I think that it's a tough case for the prosecutors, though. I mean, Keith Ellison, I know him personally. He is a very, very good attorney, very, very detailed. He was as a defense attorney, and now as a prosecutor. I'm sure that he'll put this case together the way it should be done. But you got to understand that proving intent is not as easy as one thinks. I mean, the good news is you got the videotape, and you got other people that are out there that can talk about it. But on the other hand, these officers are going to say they were just doing their job. This guy wasn't trying to get in the car, and so we had to put him down. And they're going to use all the rules of the procedures that police officers normally use in trying to say that they were just acting in their normal capacity of doing their job.
Yeah, Rick King, you're an attorney, but you're also a former police lieutenant. So yes. Let me ask you this. Let's get to that intent. To me, the toughest part, as I looked at it, was intent as well. I agree 1,000% with what Clayton's saying tonight. But for a police officer to be on his body cam with the public recording him on video and witnesses all around is intentionally committing a crime. To me, that seems to be, if I was the prosecutor in the case, I would look at that and say, yeah, that's a little bit of a hill I got to climb. Your thoughts on proving the intent?
The intent portion of the elements is likely easier against Mr. Chauvin. I think I think there's a way tougher fight when you try to convict the 2 officers who were on his back. Those 2 officers who were 4 days. One of them 4 days. One only had 3 shifts. It's going to be a much tougher hill to climb with that, because if you talk to an officer or anybody who ever worked in the police department, that's in your first couple of days, your role is to shut up and listen. And when I applaud the officers for even asking their training officer, should we do this? Because I'll tell you, in 20 years of law enforcement, I can tell you, I've been gone for some time, but at least the last 10 years that I was a police officer, we've been training about something called positional asphyxia. And that is when you handcuff someone and put them on their stomach, especially bigger people, they are likely to asphyxiate. And that position, exacerbated by Mr. Chauvin's knee on his neck and the 2 officers on his back, it was a foregone conclusion that he would asphyxiate.
Clayton, let me ask you about the other three now. So what do prosecutors, what has to be in their mind for prosecutors to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt? What are they thinking? How are they participating? What exactly do prosecutors have to present to this jury to convince them and to fill the requisites of the law in Minnesota?
You know, for the officer that was standing off to the side and not holding him down, I think they've got a tough job to prove that he aided and abetted in the attempted assault. The other two officers, you know, they've got some very legitimate defenses, and I think that the key to this case, though, is going to be that videotape and the lay witnesses, and the ability of them to say, you know, we told them to help this guy, he was dying, and I think that's going to be very important. So I think that's how it goes.
Chanley Painter, before we go, what's the latest in the investigation right now?
Well, on Monday, Derek Chauvin is expected in court for his first appearance in the afternoon in the Hennepin County District Court there. We'll see if the judge decides to lower his bail, if any. He's currently being held by the Department of Corrections on $1 million bail. And other than that, we have the memorials for George Floyd over the next several days, tomorrow in North Carolina, Monday and Tuesday in Houston, the public one Monday, and of course the private final memorial on Tuesday in Houston.
All right, Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent, thank you. Rick King and Clayton Tyler, thank you so much for your insight tonight. I hope both of you will come back and join us again.